Hi guys, this is my guide for playing a healing druid for raids. Firstly, I'm going to explain how to play druid in general, using examples from Vale Guardian, and then I'm going to go into the specifics of playing it in the Vale Guardian fight, so it's a kind of double whammy of guides. Hopefully this will serve as a good primer to get you up to speed quickly on what you should be doing as a druid. So to begin, the build uses 2 staves, one in each slot. I'll explain why you use 2 staves later on, as it's quite important. All of your skills on staff are pretty good, and I'm just going to go through them quickly. The 1 skill, Solar Beam, shoots a line between you and the targeted enemy, healing allies as it passes through them. For this reason, you want to be positioning yourself so that as many of your allies are between you and the enemy, so you catch them with the heal. This skill is your auto attack, and so you should be constantly using it throughout the duration of the fight. The 2 skill, Astral Wisp, is pretty good, and you want to be casting it off cooldown. It has a little bit of a cast animation as the orb is shot towards the boss, so you'll need to be careful about that. It then circles the boss and heals allies as it passes through them. This is useful for giving the melee group the extra bit of sustain that they wouldn't be getting otherwise. The 3 skill, Ancestral Grace, is a really good skill. You select a point on the ground and you will turn into a ball and travel there quite quickly, giving you a 1¼ second evade. The skill is so good because of 3 reasons. Firstly, it gives a pretty respectable heal to 5 people, but it's also a blast finisher, which is amazing. Comboing this with a water field provided by your 5 skill gives a really good healing burst. The final reason is that it's great for mobility. This skill has a 1200 range, making it ideal for getting to the green circles on Vale Guardian very quickly. You want to be saving this skill for when you need a quick burst heal or when you want to move quickly. The 4 skill, Vine Surge, isn't amazing, but it has its usages. It sends vines out in a straight line from you to where you selected. The vines immobilise 3 enemies for 1.5 seconds and clear, chill, cripple and immobilise from all allies it passes through. On Vale Guardian, you want to use this to CC the Seekers when they're heading towards you. The 5 skill, Sublime Conversion, is decent. It creates a smallish wall, maybe 2/3 the size of the Guardian wall, that absorbs projectiles, healing allies for a fixed amount each time a projectile is absorbed. The thing that makes this skill great is that it's a water field, so placing this, then using the 3 skill on top of it, gives a massive burst heal. Now we've gone over the staff skills, we have an entire other set of skills to go over, the Celestial Avatar skills. You build CA form primarily through healing, as it only generates at a half rate from dealing damage, which you barely do anyway. Once the bar is full, you can use Celestial Avatar form to gain a different skill bar. This also changes the functions of any glyphs you have equipped. The first skill, Cosmic Ray, is ground targeted, doing a small heal in a small radius with 1200 range. There is a reasonable delay between casting the skill and it hitting, so if you're attempting to heal someone who's moving, you'll need to lead them with your targeting. The skill is alright, but I'd only use it when you're in need of some small heals when your other, better CA skills are on cooldown. The second skill, Seed of Life, is also ground targeted. It causes a reasonable heal, blinding enemies and removing 2 conditions from allies. It's a decent skill with a very short cooldown, but again I wouldn't spam this as you have better skills to prioritise over this. Speaking of which, the 3 skill, Lunar Impact, is a really strong skill. It has a great burst heal with 1200 range and a good AoE. It also dazes enemies for 2 seconds, which makes it really good for dealing with break bars. And finally, it only has a 5-second cooldown. This is one of the 2 best skills in CA, and you'll want to use it when you need a quick burst heal for your squad. The 4 skill, Rejuvenating Tide, is also great. It makes an AoE of 240 radius centred on you that moves with you, pulsing out good healing to allies inside it and lasting about 4 seconds. The other great thing is that this is a water field, letting allies blast it to get themselves extra healing. Additionally, there are 2 traits that we use to make this and the 3 skill even better, which I'll cover after briefly going over. The 5 skill, Natural Convergence, isn't that great, at least for Vale Guardian, though I could maybe see its usages for some other bosses. It does quite a lot of things, but it's a channel skill that pulses out Cripple, Slow and Immobilise to enemies, and giving 2 stacks of stability to allies. The skill isn't great, basically because it doesn't heal. It's not useful on Vale Guardian and I've never used it on Vale, though as I said, on paper it might be useful in some other places. With the skills done, I'm going to cover some important trait points. The first one is a trait choice you have, based on your utility choices. If you're using a trap as a utility, like the healing skill for example, Trapper's expertise is really good. It increases the duration of the regen the healing trap gives from 4 seconds to 8 seconds, doubling the healing it does, which means an incredible 22k of healing from regen. If you aren't using any traps, which I generally don't on Vale Guardian, then I'd take Primal Reflexes, which gives 11ish seconds of vigour when you evade an attack. It's not amazing, but it's better than nothing. The Grandmaster we choose in the skirmishing line is a really amazing trait and one of the hardest bits to optimise correctly on Druid in my opinion. Quick Draw makes it so that when you swap weapons, the recharge of the next weapon skill you use will be reduced by 66%. You can now see why we take 2 staves. Quick Draw has a 5-second internal cooldown, which is why optimising the usage of this skill can be hard, but definitely worth it. Another important point is that Quick Draw triggers when going into the Celestial Avatar form, letting you get an extra skill usage out of your skills. It also triggers when you leave Celestial Avatar form. I'm going to explain one more thing before suggesting some skill orders. And that thing is the Grandmaster trait in the Druid line, Grace of the Land. This trait is amazing and one of the main reasons that Druid is so great. When you heal allies with Celestial Avatar abilities or you use glyphs, they gain the Grace of the Land buff, which stacks up to 5. This buff increases damage and condition damage by 3% for each stack of it, up to 15% extra damage and condu damage. This is insane. This buff is so good that we want to be pacing our rotations around it. One thing to note is that the skill that gives the Grace of the Land buff the quickest is Rejuvenating Tides, the 4th skill in Celestial Avatar form. So as for when to use CA form, ignoring any boss mechanics, assuming we're just against the damage sponge, we'll want to switch to CA whenever available and use the 4, 3 and 2 skill, and then exit CA form. This should give the full 5 stacks of the Grace of the Land buff to everyone, and by exiting CA form you can use this quite regularly, giving a good uptime on this buff. Now actual bosses deal damage to your squad, and considering Quick Draw, we want to be changing our skill order. If your group is hurting, you'll want to use your CA3 skill first, shortening its cooldown as it gives the best burst heal and it's really good range, then use the 4 skill and the 2 skill. If your squad could use some healing and are near you, you may want to instead use Quick Draw on the 4 skill for the pulsing heal. Quick Draw is also really great outside of CA form. The best staff skill to use with Quick Draw I find to be the 3rd skill. What you can do is switch weapons, use 3, then use the 5 skill for the water field, and then use the 3 again on the 5 to blast it, which gives a really good heal. Another thing to note is that if you've been in CA form for more than 5 seconds, when you leave it, Quick Draw will have activated, which you can utilise on your staff skills. As you can see, Quick Draw makes skill timing and usage quite difficult to optimise, and it will take some practice to get used to it. Finally, we can move out of weapon skills and into pets and utilities. By far your best pet is the Bristleback. It's very survivable with great toughness, and its active ability does insane damage, the most of any pet. It is however ranged, and so you'll need to be careful on certain fights of mobs aggroing on your pet. Honourable mentions go to the Tiger pet, which does decent damage, and the active ability gives 15 seconds of Fury on a 10-second cooldown, which is great. You may want to start off fights with this pet's active for the quick Fury, then switch over to the Bristle for the rest. Another decent pet is the Fernhound, whose active is an AoE heal, which is decent when learning a new raid boss. As for utility skills, I'm only going to list the main good ones. For a heal skill, I use either the Glyph of Rejuvenation, which gives a decent self-heal and allied heal normally, and a great group heal and alright self-heal in CA form. I like this skill when burst damage is more likely than tick damage, as this can immediately double a squishy class's health. The other healing utility to use is a Healing Spring, when traded as mentioned earlier. This gives a great instant heal and an insane amount of heal from regen. I prefer this for when your group is going to be taking tick damage. For other utility slots for Vale Guardian, I like to take Glyph of the Tides to help push back the Seekers and CC the boss when necessary. Just be careful not to use this in Celestial Avatar, as it will pull instead of push, and you'll end up with 3 Seekers on top of your group. Not great. The Glyph of Empowerment is a must-have, as it gives a 10% damage buff to allies when used. The CA version of this will instead give a 25% buff to healing effectiveness, which isn't as good, so make sure to use this off CD when not in CA form. As for spirits, we trait them to provide extra buffs, which makes them an incredible group DPS boosts. Frost Spirit is great as it gives 75% chance to each player to deal 10% bonus damage when they attack. Traiting this means that it also pulses out 3 stacks of might, which is great. If you have a lot of condu damage in your rage, you may also want to take the Sun Spirit, which gives 75% chance to inflict 2 stacks of burning when attacked. It also pulses out Vigour, which is alright. If you're also struggling on a new boss, you may want to take Stone Spirit, which gives ridiculous protection to your group. For elite utilities, your choices aren't that great. I prefer the Glyph of Unity, which I use when entering CA form to tether myself to allies, healing them when I heal myself. Strength of the Pack is alright as well, as it gives some good damage to your pet. Entangle may be useful in some situations too. So it turns out there's a lot more to talk about on Druid than I thought. I'm going to briefly go through some of the important parts of the Vale Guardian fight just to help show all of this stuff in an actual boss encounter. When you first run in, you want to use Frost Spirit in the middle of the segment, and then use Glyph of Empowerment when next to your allies. You want to be standing furthest away from the group, with as many of them between you and the boss so your 1 skill hits them. You want to be using your 2 and your pet's active skill of cooldown. You also need to start watching the health of your teammates, using your 3 skill on them if they get low for some burst heal. Your aim is to make sure you have CA form for the first green. When the green spawns, you need to head straight there and switch into CA, using the 3 on those in the green and then the 4 just before the green hits and damages you all. If you use 3 first, it will then be up again, and you can either use it on the range group or the melee group, depending on who needs health more. Once everyone is at a decent health again, switch out of CA so you can build up for the next green. When in the green, you can again position yourself so that your wand skill passes through all of your ranged allies in the green to top up their health. I made a mistake here in using the Glyph of Empowerment with no one nearby. Make sure to use it on your allies. My pet's active was also off cooldown, which is another mistake. This Seeker was getting too close, so I pushed it back with Glyph of the Tides. Here, CA wasn't up, so I used my next best option, the Waterfield from the 5 skill into a 3 skill, ideally with quick draw, but it didn't work here. It was probably just before the internal cooldown finished. I also Vine Surged that Seeker to further CC it. CA then came up, so I used it to top up everyone's health. I then used the 4 skill on the melee group, partly for healing, but also for the Grace of the Land buff. At phase, I like to try and get the Connie group's health up, but it's not always possible. You want to exit CA form as soon as possible and get it building up again for when the other boss is pulled onto you to offset the tick damage it does. Be careful not to burst all your healing at once. It will take a fair few seconds for the Guardians to be killed, so you need to keep counteracting their tick damage. Using Glyph of Unity here would also have been good. You may also want to use your CA3 skill and Glyph of the Tides to CC the Guardians. The Connie group may be low after they've killed the Red Guardian, so you should use your discretion as to what healing you should use on them. Ideally, you don't want to use CA at this stage, as you'll want it for when the green spawns. This first green will always spawn at the same time he does his break bar attack. Make sure to watch for the AoEs he shoots out, they do a lot of damage and can easily burst the range group down. You'll also want to watch for the melee group's health. Throwing a CA3 skill at them is good for both healing them and also contributing to the boss's break bar. Now it's just a case of keeping the health of your allies up, making sure you have some burst heal ready for the greens. Try to spawn your spirit in the centre of the arena so that you get the buff the whole time you circle round. Again, try to make sure you leave CA as soon as people aren't low and you won't need it straight afterwards. You'll want to get it building to ready again as quickly as possible. Ideally, make sure you aren't in CA when rezzing someone, as rezzing someone gives a massive amount of CA charge. The second split phase is basically the same as the first, just watch the tick damage and the blues. Try and stick close to the middle of the segment so you can get to the greens when they spawn. Staff 3 is invaluable for getting to greens quickly. In the final phase, this will probably start to happen a lot, the green spawning in the wrong segment. Ideally, you'll have CA ready, but if not, be ready to use your healing skill and to quick draw your 3 onto your 5. Also, after it happens once, it's likely to keep happening, so be prepared to throw out your healing multiple times. Try and be conservative. I switched to the Hound here for the healing skill as I noticed we were getting low, and my healing wasn't quite ready. We get a couple of downs here, but getting the greens always has a higher priority than rezzing the downed. Rezzing, however, takes priority over dealing damage. Get people up quickly and give them a quick healing burst so they don't go down again straight away. As a Druid, you're pretty tanky, so you can take a Seeker abuse for a few seconds while you're rezzing, but make sure you don't go down. Your survival is more important. If you go down too, your attempt is stuffed. It can be hard sometimes to see where the people on low health are. You'll get used to spotting them, but it's often the light armour or low health classes, so knowing who's on these classes is useful for being able to find them. When the green spawns far away and you don't have your 3 skill, make sure to use your dodges to get there faster. Dodging when in combat is faster than moving normally. This attempt might have failed due to the green spawning in the wrong section, but the tank moved the boss very well, which prevented it from happening more often. If you find your raid having to deal with greens in lit up segments often, you may need to get your tank to move the boss quicker. It's the main cause of wipes in this segment of the fight. We've finally reached the end. Thanks for watching, and I hope this info will help you in your own raids. If you have any questions, then leave a comment. I've put a written version of this guide in the description, which may be useful if you want to find a certain bit of info again. Thanks again, and good luck.